with IT.
Nice to meet you, Eric.
Hey, Frank. I'm alright. How you doing? Just setting up the stream in here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Test, test, test. Test, test. Test. Another still. Test. Test. Oh, I get many of them. Headphones. Test. Not long enough.
I was going to ask if you could tell CDC they have this thing and you could see everyone.
Test.
You look so distressed.
No, just making sure it works.
Okay, do you have my presentation
No, do you have a
too?
PowerPoint?
I do.
Okay.
I emailed it to Antonia.
Susan, it should be in there.
Great.
Oh, it's in there.
Oh.
Great. Okay.
Yeah,
Incorporated?
It's all in,
One giant
it's all in
PowerPoint.
one giant file.
Excellent. Okay.
So it's
I'm gonna
probably
run
at the
to
end of the
ladies'
slides.
I don't want to get too close.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with the meeting. And I think more people will probably come on in, but we've got a pretty full agenda. And I know some people have to leave early, so I figured we'd just go ahead and get started. So it's great to be here and to be with you all. It has, let's see, tomorrow I will have been in Chicago for a month. And I've got to say, the weather has been amazing over the last month. So I'm sure it's like this all the time. That's right. So we'll sort of watch and see how it goes. But this is my first faculty meeting, so we'll see how it goes. And I think for some of you in this room, it may be yours first as well. But looking forward to working with you all over the years as we move forward. So this is the agenda. We've got a pretty full agenda today. So I'm going to do a little bit of my welcome for you all. When I met with the executive committee, they were particularly interested in hearing about my priorities and my thoughts for the school. And since I've only been here about 2 weeks, I don't have a lot of formed thoughts. But I've been doing a lot of listening, and I will continue to do quite a bit of listening over the next several months. And so what I am going to share with you all is a little bit about what I am hearing, and you can distill from that. But realize that this is going to be a really important and evolving story as we move forward and want to. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I know last month you all, come on in. You all had a retreat, and so want to share with you all some of the results from that retreat. I've asked each of the 4 divisions to give a very brief 5-minute report on what's going on in each of their divisions, and they will do that. And then I wanted 2 reports for you all. One around CEF and what's going on there, and Susan will do that. And then I asked Jackie Finch also to talk about the budget, what we're seeing in terms of trends moving forward, and then we'll close with some announcements and all that stuff. So just wanted you to know. So I'm doing a whole series of listening sessions as we move forward. I've met with all 4 of the division directors, and that has really been a very robust dialogue that I've had with them. I've also met with everyone, I think, in the dean's office, all the associate deans and assistant deans as well, and that's been also a really robust and informative process. One of the things that I want to do is get down and participate in one of the division director meetings. Ron was gracious to invite me on my first day to the Epi and Biostat meeting, and one of the things that he did at that meeting was very much had the meeting just like he normally hands the meeting, and that was exactly what I wanted, and just really like to observe and see what's happening. And he did a fantastic job there, and it was just a great first exposure. So I look forward to the other 3 divisions and having an opportunity to come meet with you all as well. The other thing I've done in this building, and I was trying to get over to 2121 this morning, got pulled into the Vice Chancellor's office for a meeting. But one of the things I've done, and I'm a fan of, is just walking around. And so met a number of you all as I walked around the School of Public Health last week, this building. But on Wednesday afternoon, I'll go over and walk around the 2121 building. And sort of, if folks are there, it'll be great to see folks. And that sort of. I'm going to have a series of brown bag forums with faculty, with staff, and with students. They will be monthly forums. This is something I did at CDC that was really helpful. I might start off the meeting talking about a couple of issues relevant to the school, but it's really an open forum for folks to ask questions, have a dialogue, whatever. So I will do that. And then the last thing, or the 2 other things that I will mention, one is I'm setting up office hours. Those will start in October. And so if you would like to schedule 30-minute slots to talk with me about any issues, Janine oh, there you are. Janine, you can just email Janine to schedule those as well. Those will start October 4th. And then there are a number of community forums that I've participated in just to hear. So I'm going to be meeting with folks at the state, folks at the city. Danny Davis had an event a week or two ago. Suzette McKinney had something. So I'm just getting out, meeting with folks in the community. The Prevention Research Centers program had their community advisory board here on Friday. It was a great opportunity for me to connect with a bunch of folks through there as well. So there are lots of forums just for me. Come on in. Okay, that's fine. Go around the way. But feel free to, if there are things you want me to be engaged in and participate in, just let me know. In terms of what I'm hearing and sort of what I see as sort of strengths, and again, remember, this is an incomplete picture, and I can't say that enough. I think part of what I hear, and part of this was in the email I sent out about a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, but really strengths in terms of the great academic excellence, the great student experience that our students have, and really I think we should pride ourselves on that. The awards that many of our faculty have received as well. Also the cutting edge research. When I was at the PRC meeting on Friday, I was really jazzed at the types of research that are going on through the Prevention Research Center, but really throughout the school, I think some really important cutting-edge public health research that's going on across the school. Diversity, and I think as you see the results from the retreat, this issue of diversity comes up over and over and over again, but really priding ourselves on the diversity in many ways in terms of faculty, students, and staff, but also diversity in terms of the type of topics that we address as a school. A strong commitment to social justice, also an important part of what we do and why we are all here. We're here to make the world a much better place. And also a strong focus around what's happening in Chicago and around the world in urban health as part of that as well. Concerns, and what am I hearing from that? I think one is that we really need to do a better job, and I don't think this is really unique to UIC School of Public Health, but we find this a lot in public. We need to do a better job of telling our story and how we market the work that we do. I think that our I've frequently told folks the story that when I was looking at UIC and reflecting on whether or not to come here, and I went on the website, and I went to the faculty section, and basically the way the website was, it has changed since then, but the way it was at the time, you had to type in the name of a faculty member to get their profile. I said, well, what if I don't know who the faculty are? Now it's much better. You can now go to each of the divisions and click on a faculty name, but I am struck by the fact that it's uneven in terms of the types of profiles that are on the page. And there are a number of faculty and staff where there's actually no information available. And so I think as we think about the work that we all need to be doing collectively, as we think about prospective students, we need to make sure that they understand and can see the great work that you all are doing. They are aware of the awards that you all are receiving, and that's what's really going to help us as we move forward. I've heard a lot about transparency and sharing information, and so part of what I'll do today and others in the Dean's office will be doing a lot of sharing so that you have information in terms of what's happening there as well. Budget, 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 and Jackie is going to be presenting a lot about sort of what's going on in the state of the school in terms of budget. I've also heard quite a bit about workload and that folks are extremely busy, and I understand that, and I see that every day, and I am struck by, coming from CDC, I'm struck by the number of committees that the school has. I must say, it's one of the few places I know of that has a committee on committees. You know, and I've heard that over and over again. And then I think part of what we need to wrestle with is this issue about how do we standardize things, but how do we give people autonomy as well? And there's some tension there, but part of what I think we need to have a discussion about is what do we do in terms of branding, autonomy, and other things to give people the freedom to do the important work that they need to do, but there also needs to be some standardization as well. The other thing that I do want to mention at the onset, and really it isn't in the area of concern, but I mentioned this to the division directors when I met with them a week or so ago, but as I see it, where the work of the school gets done is in the divisions, and to me they are vitally important, and so really want to be very clear about the importance and the value that we have in the divisions, and so I wanted to say that as we move forward. Any questions on sort of that before I go into research outcomes or thoughts? Retreat outcomes, I'm sorry. I've got research on the brain. Okay, let me go into some of the retreat outcomes, and I know you all had a retreat. Lorraine had asked if I could participate in the retreat, but this was it was, I think, the last week where we were finally packing up the house in Atlanta, and there was just no way that I could make it, and I was sorry to make it. But I did want to share with you some of the themes from that retreat, and I think you all probably know more about what's going on and the issues, etc., than I do, but I was really pleased to see some of the recurring themes that you will see as part of this as well. There were two major areas: promoting student success and advancing public health, as I understand it. And here are, what I did was I just went ahead and tallied sort of how you all voted in each of the areas, and I include the must-do and the should-do into one category, just to be transparent about my methods. And as I think about this work, one of the themes that I learned from a prior supervisor is to do a few things well. And so one of the things that I would encourage us collectively to think about is, in each of these areas, what are the one or the two things that we might do really well. And I think future discussions about that will be important. But sort of, so what I've done is, in each of these areas, sort of just tallied everything by score. So you see increased scholarship opportunities is one of the key things, expanding student services, continuing the integrated core, and having faculty office hours. So all of those are part of student life. Global health was one of the other cross-cutting areas. Some sort of org structure, and I have met with some of the global health folks within the school as well, but org structure that might better support global health, global systems throughout the curriculum, fundraising. I will say in many of the areas the issue of resources and fundraising came up, international conference, and a Center for Global Systems Studies. In terms of health equity, increased faculty, staff, student diversity, engaging students, leveraging our location here in Chicago, identifying non-traditional teachers, and evolving the curriculum. Intellectual space, creating collaborative approaches for research and dissertations, seed funding for faculty and students, resources for all strategies, smaller curriculum. CBPR, outreach and communications, implementing a database, standardizing internal processes, fundraising, and improving infrastructure. And then in terms of advancing public health, minimizing faculty burden, this gets into this issue of workload and such. Faculty development for diverse students, a new building that might foster communication. I've heard a lot about couldn't we all get into one building together and sort of how that might help. This integrated model to support students in a student faculty staff database. Global health, increase global collaboration, expanding global health research, travel support, an international and then a UIC campus in another country as part of that as well. Health equity, designation as a national center around health equity issues, creating a center on the elimination of health disparities, integrate and leverage our infrastructure, a tax on commodities that might fund disparities elimination and disparities work, and a communication strategy. In the intellectual space, increase diversity, conduct a business case analysis. There was a lot of talk about how we might engage fundraisers and some of our donors around a think tank as well, and then engage external experts in planning processes. CBPR, data sharing, a consortium on big data and data utilization, a coordinated center for public health practice, issues around curriculum and faculty incentives. So anyway, that gives you a sense of sort of some of the results from the retreat. Any thoughts or questions in terms of the retreat and the retreat outcomes? Okay, all right, good. So community health sciences, do you want to give your quick report and update? Sure. Great. And you may want to come up here because there are people online so that they can hear you.
Thank you, Dean Giles. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Jesus Ramirez Valles for the new faces. I'm the Director of Community Health Sciences. A few updates. We have a kind of difficult summer with a lot of activity. Most importantly, more sadly, we lost our dear colleague, C. Boyd, over the summer. So it was very difficult loss for all of us in UIC, particularly in the health sciences, because she built a lot of the community engagement pieces that we relied on. So we lost her. Also, Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Ruggiero moved to different universities. And then we have a new academic coordinator, Stuart Robinson. And so that's personal in terms of all this stuff. Financially speaking, we are broke. And the good news is that besides that we can keep carrying, deficits that you will be hearing. We have a very, very good solid enrollment of new students. We recruited 81 new MPH students and 3 new PhD students. And last, I will take this opportunity to say a little bit about the global task force, global engagement. Sure. So I'm part of the University of Illinois UIC campus. Task force on global engagement, led by the new Vice Provost for International Affairs and Global Engagement. Our dear colleague, Jerry is co-chairing because she's now official on the College of Medicine. So she is co-chairing this task force, and I'm part of the larger team. So it's only FYI, you will be hearing from us about 3 things. One is we'll be doing an inventory across campus. They're going to be doing focus groups, and it's going to be an online survey developed by the research lab, our colleague Tim Johnson. So if you're interested, when you receive those emails, take a few minutes, or if you can participate in the focus focus groups, please come and join us and provide that information. The idea is to have this assessment or swap analysis by April next year to the provost. Thank you.
Great. Questions? Okay. Good. Sam?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sam Dorvich, the Interim Division Director of Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences. I'm going to tell you about an exotic location that few of you have probably visited before. It is not Paris or Cuba or even Kenya. It is a lonely planet about 6 blocks away. A lot of people want to know, do you need a passport to go there? You do not. You can walk right in. What do you wear when you travel to EOHS? We are a 4-season climate place, so in the summer, you'll wear something different than in the winter. But it's really not that far away, and we encourage you to come visit, meet some of your colleagues. We are a very research-intensive division. We are also broke, not that badly broke though. We're like just a tiny bit of red ink right now. And unlike some of the other divisions, we mainly generate revenue through research activity as opposed to tuition dollars. We have a lot of community engaged research that takes place in the areas of environment and occupation. We have laboratories that are capable of measuring pollutants in air and water and supporting citizen science together with communities. So come by and visit. We accept American currency, so any dean or provost that would like to spend money in our locale, you don't even need to go. Okay, all right. We have been very busy preparing for the massive overhaul in our curriculum, in all of our curricula, that is being driven by CEF. And the chair of our curriculum committee, Dr. Rachel Jones, has been fantastic at helping keep us on track and keep us organized. These are the proposed concentrations that we are working on. An EOHS generalist degree at the master's level. We will continue offering industrial hygiene, occupational medicine, occupational safety. We are proposing a new online MPH in public health preparedness and a concentration in water and health. We will also continue offering jointly with Epidemiology and Biostatistics, occupational and environmental epi at the master's level, and then the EOHS MPH. So the curriculum and the research have been the main things that we have been working on and will continue working on. And if there are any questions, I'd be glad to take them. Okay.
And I will be coming to this building on Wednesday afternoon. So anyone who wants to join me as I trek down the 6 blocks,
yes,
feel free to join me.
You don't need any special immunizations. No, you can just
shots.
No, nothing like that.
Great. Ron?
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Hershow, the director of the Division of Epidemiology and Biostatistics. The advantage of going third is that I can say that we too are this and we too are that. We too are broke, and we too have been very busy on CEF accreditation and a lot of the other things that the other division directors talked about. So I took a slightly different tack. I would like to talk about what's new in EpiBio and announce the launch of a new sequence in big data in our biostats section. And it's recognizing that there has been a big shift in the biostatistical world engendered by healthcare information systems that represent a huge mass of information stored as text and that are unusual by conventional data mining methods. And in the first of the courses, sort of the intro course, which is called Big Data Analytics and Health Sciences, we're attempting to teach students and professionals important informational technologies used in extracting, manipulating, storing, and analyzing unstructured data. In the course of taking this class, our students will learn information retrieval techniques, retrieving and analyzing information from online data sources, including several mentioned here, text mining, document clustering, classification, sentiment analysis, the all-important Python programming language, and big data processing framework, Apache Spark ML, a machine learning application, and importantly, ethical issues involved in natural language processing. The course is very inclusive. The prerequisites are relatively minimal. Basic quantitative skills, including elementary statistics and basic programming skills, R and SAS, or any programming or scripting knowledge is helpful, and but just a plain old willingness to learn is the only real prerequisite for this. We have a second course in the sequence. That course is currently being launched now, the introductory course. The Part 2 course allows a greater emphasis on the application of statistical methods to analyze that rich public health, potentially rich public health data that stems from individuals, community or institutions, and healthcare related facilities like hospitals or health related industries. At the end of this course, we anticipate that our students will be able to effectively summarize and analyze any high dimensional data, such as electronic medical records, health metrics, healthcare costs, nutrition fitness, pharmaceutical, microarray, and microbiome data sets. In addition, they will be able to apply advanced analytic techniques to examine and analyze big or complex or sparse data sets. Anyway, these courses I could go on about, but really what I wanted to do is put them on your plate to consider for your students, and you can read more about them in publicly available data. The prerequisites for the second course include a background in any multiple and logistic regression class. Biostats 401 or the equivalent would do. It is helpful but not necessary to have entry-level matrix algebra or computational biostatistics or programming in R and SAS, but in general, again, a willingness to learn those elements will get you into the course. We are considering leveraging these two courses into a potential concentration in biostats at the MS level, perhaps, or a certificate program, and we're currently talking that over. Another big item that was a very pleasant surprise was the funding of a National Institute on Environmental Health Science Core Center, or P30, at UIC. So I'd like to officially announce something that many of you may be aware of, the Chicago Center for Health and Environment. The acronym is CACHE. It's a joint NIEH-designated environmental health sciences core between two main institutions, UIC and U of C, and will be one of only 20 such centers across the country. At UIC, the PI is Dr. Gail Prenz from the College of Medicine, and the University of Chicago PI is Dr. Habib Hassan. It is housed at the School of Public Health, however, that is the UIC portion of it is, and it features UIC core leaders Vicky Persky and Mary Torek, as well as other SPH faculty across many divisions highlighted in blue on this figure, including Maria Argos, Jenny Hebert-Byrne, Joe Zanoni, Marcia Love, Sam Dorovich, Wayun Chen, and Rachel Jones. The idea of a P30 is to facilitate research collaboration by funding institutional infrastructure that can be shared among environmental health researchers. It aims to build research capacity at the institutions and increase the funded research portfolio, and all P30s share 4 common goals: advancing scientific research, promoting community engagement, advancing translational research, and training new researchers. To accomplish these aims, the program contains a pilot project program providing seed grant money for UIC researchers and U of C researchers to obtain preliminary and proof of principle data for successful R01 grants. Having this type of center positions UIC to become highly competitive for other grants, such as NIEHS, EPA, Superfund Research Awards, or Training Grant Awards. So we're very excited to to launch the first year of this effort, and excited to partner with all divisions and other units on campus on these endeavors.
Thank you, Ron. Questions for Ron?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Powell, Division Director for HPA. I'd like to begin by welcoming our newest faculty member, Nick Tillotman. Nick, if you, do you want to stand up and just introduce yourself? We may have some other new faculty here, so it would be great to get those introductions afterwards, but we're just thrilled to have Nick in our department. If you see him wandering around the school, please introduce yourself. Nick is an economist, and he comes to us from Cornell. We're thrilled to have him here.
Yep.
Thanks.
Nice to meet everyone. I study healthcare economics. I'm mostly interested in insurance benefit design, behavior of hospitals and doctors, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm on the 7th floor. Feel free to stop by and say hello.
Thanks, Nick. And we had 2 retirements this summer, Richard Sewell and Ross Molnar, and John Dotkean, who left earlier in the year. And thank you to the Dean's Office for arranging the wonderful get-together a couple of weeks ago for all retirees. So lots of change in that sense in our division. We have 2 upcoming retirements in the year this year. So with that amount of turnover in our faculty, along with the fact that June Ma has resigned from HPA and taken a position over in medicine, College of Medicine here at UIC, we've had a lot of change in the composition, and we actually have a fairly low number of faculty. So we are launching 2 searches. And we had a meeting this morning, and we will be hiring in public health policy and health economics, health services research. We'll be getting the ad out in the next week or so. So we would love it if people, if you know of people who you think would be a great fit, we could give you the ad. You could send it to them personally. I think that kind of thing really helps to recruit great people to UIC. So we would appreciate your help on that. In terms of enrollment, we have really strong enrollment this year in MPH, MHA program, and in the PhD program. Less so in our online programs. That could be for a couple of reasons, that they went to full cost recovery. So our MPH program has slightly lower enrollment. We also have slightly lower enrollment in our PHI program. And I think it's really nice to follow Ron's discussion about big data, because we've been thinking about potentially rebranding perhaps the public health informatics. And there might be, Ron was thinking about maybe a certificate. Well, we already have a certificate in PHI, but this is where maybe some cross collaboration might make sense. We might want to think about putting something together on big data and PHI, because I think there's really a market out there. But to get at that market, we have to market. So I think if we maybe think about pulling these things together, there might be a nice opportunity to get into that niche, which is different from just health informatics, which is also done on this campus, but on the other part of campus. So we've been busy also trying to align with CEF. So to give you one example, our comprehensive MPH and our PEP, which is if you've had some years you require fewer credits, we're aligning the required courses for that so that it would just be one type of subspecialty, so that we would have less faculty needed to fulfill that. And then finally, I guess what I'd like to mention is we have our EMHA program. Normally, the year is on a September to September basis. That enrollment is January. Those applications are due in October 15th. The Executive Masters of Healthcare Administration program reaches to people who, if they're clinicians, have about 5 years experience, if they're in the medical field but not, or hospital field, or healthcare generally but not a clinician, about 7 to 8 years. If you know of individuals who you think would be outstanding candidates, let us know. We'll give you materials, because I know a lot of individuals here work with healthcare, not just in public health, but healthcare more related partners. We can pass that information, and it would be timely for the October 15th meeting. Then finally, I would just really like to thank the Dean for coming to our PRC meeting, which was our Community Advisory Committee meeting last Friday. I can really say that our community partners were thrilled that he took the time to do so. So I would recommend for anyone else's centers, if you've got a similar meeting, reel him in, because actually it didn't even take much. It wasn't reeling him in. He just said yes right away. But get him to come, because it will impress your partners. And I think it just shows really goodwill on behalf of SPH, that we really care about our partners and we're vested in them. We had great attendance because the Dean was there. There were 1 or 2 people who couldn't make it, and they sent multiple apologies, which we usually don't get. So anyway, that's it. And if there's any questions, just let me know.
So it's really good. And thanks for the comment, Lisa. I will say, even though the last 2 weeks have been a whirlwind, let me tell you, I will say I love getting out and meeting the partners. And so if there are opportunities for me to do that, don't hesitate to reach out to Janine. I'd love to be there. I will tell you, the conversation was really exciting on Friday. But I was supposed to, so I was supposed to be there from 9 to 10. And I wanted to stay so bad, so I said, well, I'm just going to stay. But there was a photographer who was here on Friday as well to take pictures of me with students. And so I kept on getting all these text messages on my phone. The students are here, the students are here, the students are here. So I had to leave. And then I just had a great time with the students. I mean, they were just fantastic. I mean, they were so energetic and engaged, and really had some fantastic thoughts. So it just really reinvigorated the decision sort of to come to UIC and sort of how great it is. So I really appreciate that. So any opportunity that you all have, please reach out to me and to Janine, and I'd be more than happy, as much as my schedule allows, to be able to participate in that, because it's really great. And it helps me to do a better job of articulating why the school is so important. So Jackie, do you want to come and talk a little bit about sort of, and folks, I really think it's important that everybody understands the situation that we are under as a school, and so want to be as transparent as possible about this. I really do think in the next couple of years we can turn this situation around. But I just want to make sure everybody understands the situation, because the budget is such an important driver of everything that we do. So that's why I asked Jackie to come and do the and then after Jackie's finished, if people have questions or comments, we're happy to sort of open things up for a little bit of dialogue, and then Susan will present. The down button.
Okay. I'm Jackie Finch. I'm the Associate Dean for Finance and Administration, for those of you who don't know me. Okay. This is our revenue picture from beginning in 2013 to last year, 2017. And I don't think I have to explain to most of you, because you're very well educated, what the lines mean, because they're all going down. There are, and as you would already know, grants and contracts drives ICR, so that the fact that those lines are somewhat parallel shouldn't be a surprise, and we have lived off of the ICR generated by you, and so, you know, given the changes in government, the state, the feds, this is all reflected right now in what our revenue stream looks like. I do want to highlight the state line, the blue one, kind of toward the bottom. In 2016, you'll see a number that's $14 million. In 2017, you'll see a number that's $10 million. That is not a reflection of our loss of state funding. What the School of Public Health has done for, well, I've only been here 17 years, but all of those 17 years and probably before, is because not only the school, but the campus had fairly robust financial reserves, we have overspent our state dollars by $2, $3, $4 million a year, and we've been able to take ICR at the end of the year and flip it into the state to cover that over expenditure. That saved us several million dollars in fringe benefits, which is why we've done it, because the fringe benefit rate on ICR is around 40%. Beginning in 2017, we can no longer do that because the university has no cash reserves, and the university can't allow it because there's no flexibility to do that. So the $10 million in 2017 really was our state appropriation, and that's all we could spend on it, which in addition to the other issues with the state budget in particular, means that going forward we're going to have to manage rather differently, because there's going to be a lot more expenditures on ICR, which will also increase the cost of personnel. And in the foreseeable future, I don't see that changing. I'm not going to say never, because you know, never's a very long time, but certainly the university is not going to be in a position to allow that going forward for some time, because as you all know, they borrowed your money to cash fund even last year. So as they are paying that back over the next 8 years, that suggests to me they're not anticipating a lot of flexibility in the shorter run. So that's, I don't know if you have any questions on this particular.
Where's tuition?
Tuition is part of the state budget. The state budget is both tuition and general revenue funds.
So that should be going up.
No, because the state budget's been cut for every year since 2010, including they cut based on the total state budget, which includes tuition. The way we allocate it in the school has meant that we get money when tuition goes up, but then they're taking it away on the other side. So sometimes we're a little up, sometimes we're a little down, but our state budget has been cut annually in one form or another since 2010. That's true across the campus. That's not just the School of Public Health. Linda?
And then I assume that the tuition waiver and remission also gets reflected in those tuition dollars.
Tuition waivers are reflected in the tuition dollars. Tuition remission comes back really through the ICR. It's weird. So our waiver rate has gone from approximately 70% in 2000. What year did I give you? 10? Around 2010, when we started getting our own tuition money, our tuition waiver rate was about 70%. We're now at about 40 on average. It varies a bit. and it's started to creep up a bit. It varies a bit between units, but clearly we've reduced our waivers because they don't give us money that isn't paid.
Can you just clarify waivers a little bit further? So a tuition waiver means that in the past 70% of our students did not pay any tuition, and now 40% don't pay any tuition?
Yes, because it tends to go with assistantships. RAs, TAs, GAs, you waive their tuition gets waived. And it's important to have those, but you know, it's finding the right balance, and I think we've been working on that now for 10 years, 8 years, so.
So when we get tuition dollars back from the waivers, they actually give that back to us in the form of ICR rather than as a quote state on the state line. Do you think
The tuition remission?
Yeah, the tuition remission. Even though it's making up, so if we had it in the original format as tuition, it would be on a state line. But the university is still getting it, but through the tuition remission. But when they transfer it to the school, you're saying it comes on an ICR line.
Yes.
So that's an important distinction, since given the benefit issue of the 40%. Do you think it would be possible to argue that since it's tuition dollars, that it would come back in the state line?
I think that they have argued that because it's coming from grants, that it's related to ICR. I mean, I would agree, but I am doubtful that the campus is going to change the way they do their accounting because they pull it as a percentage of ICR.
Jackie, do you include IHRP in these numbers?
Yes, these numbers do include IHRP. This slide and the next slide include IHRP.
Any other questions just on this slide, or sort of what's happening in terms of revenue for this slide?
I guess I just, one question. Which line is ICR? Is that institutional funds?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. So what would be the amount that would put us even?
I'll show you. Lovely. Oh, you didn't put the revenue expenditure one in? Nope. Okay. Well, so to answer Saria's question, in 2016 we about broke even. In 2017, the difference between revenues and expenditures in total was about $7 million. That breaks down very differently among the units. That includes IHRP, and the amount of our carry forward was about $7 million, of which, as you know, the campus borrowed 39%, which they will begin to repay, we believe, in October of this year. But that slide's not on here. It looks like this. But expenditures have been going down as well as revenues. And so, you know, we need to credit everybody who've been really working hard to not have an unbalanced budget. They started to creep up a little bit. They crept up a little bit last year, but not very much. So, and you know, there are some costs that are, as you know, it takes a long time to change people or reduce staff and therefore reduce service. So this last slide is kind of where we have ended up the last 2 years. This does not include IHRP. It's only the state-funded units, the 4 academic units, and the dean's office. And it shows you why Jesus and Ron stood up and said they were broke. And EOHS is not so broke, but they're kind of hovering right at the edge. HPA, it obviously is not below the line, and then the dean's office. And so this is kind of what we're struggling with. Part of it was exacerbated last year, was sort of the perfect storm. There had been no state budget. We had been using up our cash reserves, which arguably they were for, but we were getting toward the end. And our enrollments dropped last year. And so while we've begun to make them up, that's a multiple year activity, because we will, this year's second year students were the smaller number of last year's first-year students. But, so there are a lot of ways to have potential. From the campus perspective, in 2016, we had no deficits because we covered those deficits with Dean's Office funds and with money that we borrowed from IHRP, which will have to be paid back. But from the campus perspective, we were whole in 2016. We could not do that in 2017 because for the 2016 reserves were used, and then we had fewer of them because of the escrow, and because at a certain point, once you've used up your cash, you've used up your cash. So. Mm-hmm.
Very basic question. Looking at things at the division level, we had tuition broken out. It was a bit of a mystery, I think, to some of us anyways. It was going down fairly precipitously when we knew that our enrollments weren't going down like that. So just at a basic level, that is because why?
It could be because of waiver rates. If they're not paying it, we don't get the money. I'd have to look more specifically at what's going on in any particular division.
I was just kind of thinking about marketing and okay, if we get some more quality students in here. I know it's not. I'm not a administrator, so it's complicated.
Well, and
online tuition, or are they gonna? But it was so dramatic, really, that it just kind of puzzled some of us.
And part of it, I mean, it depends on your scale. So some things can look more dramatic, but I'd have to look at
sure.
at the specific numbers. I think my personal opinion is one thing that we could do a lot better at is using our scholarships as recruitment, and so that we give more students the money to pay tuition, because then we get 75% of it back, as opposed to waiving it. Of course, we still want to have assistantships because there's an educational purpose to it, but maybe we have a few more that we recruit and fund so that they don't need to do that, that kind of thing. But I can take a look at the other stuff. Are there other?
Vicki has a question.
Vicki.
I think Kim answered it this week, but I just want to know publicly. The ICR, that's 39% of the 39%. That's going back to the original.
We haven't seen the guidelines. That's what I've heard, is that it's going to have to. It will come back as we took it out. I'm not sure. Then I've heard whispers around that there could be more discretion among the units on if they wanted to pay something back more than others, but I haven't seen any guidelines yet. So everything most of what I've heard is that it will come back the way it went out.
And then this decrease in funding stuff, I mean, ultimately it's centralization to some extent, the central campus, more than we've had for quite a while, right? I mean, they're pulled back in ICR, and they're even with the decrease from 5% to 3-point-something%, but they're going to give the colleges, cut the colleges, that's still a decrease from the central administration.
The 5%, 3% is the cut to the state budget this year, and that's at the campus has cut everybody's state budget by 3% to fund the repayment of the 39% escrow.
I guess I'm having a hard time understanding. I mean, 3 years ago, we were estimating the whole UI system had something like 2.4 or 2.6 billion in software money, and some of that was obviously in the colleges. No matter what happened at the state level, even before the budget.
Can you back a slide?
Yeah, no, I'm talking university-wide.
No, I know.
I'm still having trouble with the message we're getting from the central administration. I guess we'll keep challenging this, is the central with the campus committees.
it's because, well, they when they escrowed the money, they got a lot more pushback than they anticipated. I mean, the academic nobody had been consulted. They made this decision. We all told them it was horrendously unfair and unbalanced. And so in order to speed up the repayment because of the noise is part of the reason that they're taking state money to do that, because they have no cash. 2 years without a state budget meant that the cash got burned up. And as Vicki said, a lot of the cash was in the colleges, and it's in a lot of the faculty ICR accounts, which the units and the colleges, at least in the School of Public Health, we don't tap for operating expenditures. So the total picture, that deficit picture, does not include your ICR. It only is the operating ICR account in each unit. And so the bigger picture for the school is not quite that grim, except that unless you're going to share your money, which I'm not anticipating you want to do, it's the placement of it.
That's not what I'm questioning completely, although I very much appreciate the picture that you've given. I'm questioning what we're getting from the central campus in terms of projected problems that they may have with budget. I don't quite see it from everything I've seen in these central campus committees. And maybe I'm just dumb, but I don't get it. I mean, 2.4, 2.6 billion is a lot of money that's socked away. Some of which, or a fair portion of which, was already socked away in the central administration, not just the colleges. So I guess I'm just suggesting that when you're communicating, as we're communicating, when you're communicating with the central campus to try to get this level of transparency or more. Because I don't quite believe it, having followed this very closely to the union and the Senate exec. I don't believe we have to be hit this hard.
Lori?
So, the campus as a whole finished 2015, the year we got very little money.
Had no budget.
$125 million, and that's, in order to fill that, they took the $125 million, which was the 39%. They're paying that back by cutting the state appropriation to equal over 8 years, $125 million. The decrease in the ICR and the state is a little complicated because of the swaps that we do. So, and last year, so this is 2017, which is the year that just ended, not the year that just started. We did have lower enrollments. So we did see both a cut at the state, cut at the campus level of, over the last 3 years, somewhere around 15%, which I think is what you're getting at. There have been these ongoing cuts to our state appropriation, combined with lower enrollments. So the number for 2017 was lower. It will probably be higher again this year because of tuition.
But they've also tried to not raise tuition rates for the last couple of years. And so more students obviously is more money, but we're not getting bigger jumps during the years when we were not only getting higher numbers of students, but they were paying a higher rate. They've really tried to keep the rate steady for the last several years because of the number of students who were choosing to not come to Illinois, period. Lisa.
So I just would also like to raise one other point that I think that probably many of the divisions are struggling with is, yes, we have flows, but those numbers are flows. What do we end up at the end of the year? But there's also stock of debt. And so we need a plan on how we're going to be paying that down. So I liked your number for us. It's higher than ours, so maybe we're getting a surprise that we don't know about. But we have $200,000 in debt in ICR
is certainly an issue for all of us, and I think that will be part of the task that you all and the dean and I will be trying to sort out on how to do this. And I'm quite sure that come October, the campus is going to be sending forms for us to fill out deficit plans, because they have clearly covered this year, and we will have to repay them for where we ended 2017. Bob.
Where is the undergraduate program?
The undergraduate program isn't on here. 2017 was the last year that they were still getting a campus subsidy, and so their revenues aren't as clean yet. They are at about half the enrollment that they were expected to be by now, and so obviously the plan had been that after 5 years they'd be at around 200 students and would be producing revenue that would in fact fund other activities in the school. That hasn't quite transpired. They got a bit of a late start, but I think.
So this coming year there'll be a deficit there as well?
I don't know. It depends on what their enrollments are. They've also been much more successful in having their pre-majors courses very full, so we have gotten revenues that were unanticipated, which balanced it out sort of, but it's part of the planning that will have to go forward. Karen?
This is a bit of a moving target, and something that is a bit disturbing to me. I don't know what the breakout point is. It was never designed to be 100 students make us break even. So I anticipate that the break even, paying the total cost of our program, are much lower than that 100 students. So I get a little uneasy when it seems that people think that we are so deficient and not supporting the rest of the university. We in fact pay a portion of a lot of salaries in the divisions for people who teach with us. So we're contributing that way, and we do have, we're halfway there. That halfway may be enough to break even. I don't know. It's a little like shooting fish in a barrel.
Other questions? I mean, so I do think part of what we need to be having a discussion on, and this has been really helpful, is how do we turn the ship around? How do we begin boosting revenue? And so, I think, there are some things that are under our direct control, and there are some things that aren't under our direct control, right? The state revenue, right, I would say that's not under our direct control, right? I mean, you could say, well, I can talk with my state legislator and state senator and do it, and that's right, you can do that, but that's not under, but I would say what we're doing in terms of ICR and research, right, and the number of grants we submit, that's under our control, right? But we know the NIH budget last year went up by $2 billion. It's going to go up by $2 billion again this year, right? So NIH is getting more money, right? That's something that's under our control. Right? So we can use that to help us boost research. We do need to have a discussion about how big the school is, right? Because I do think that is also another potential place for us to generate revenue. Right? So I think collectively us having a discussion about those issues is going to be really important. We can look at our donor base, right? So what we can do with our donors. So those to me are the areas where we have control over our revenue moving forward. And so I think, I'm going to start with the division directors and then I'll move to others, but having a discussion about what we need to be doing and then setting those expectations is going to be important. So part of why I wanted you all to see all of this was because I wanted you all to have a picture of what's been happening over the last several years. And I want you all to understand that so that we can collectively work. Because I think, there may be some belt tightening over the next couple of years, But I do think we can end up being surplus. Okay. And that's part of what I want to work with you all. Okay. I just want to be really clear. Questions or comments?
I mean, if I'm interpreting that photograph.
Yeah, you can. I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't have had you switch that. Yeah.
The deficit in the dean's office works.
No, yes.
And our impression down here in the weeds is that the dean's office has been growing, which means growing not only in terms of numbers of people, but presumably in terms of budget. So what, I mean, that seems to be where we can attack the biggest part of our deficit. So what's kind of...
So, you know, one of the things I like to do is lead by example. And so I do think part of what we need to be doing in the dean's office is looking at what we're doing, what our functions are. There are a number of vacancies in the dean's office. We do need to be thinking about what we do there. However, I think it's important for us to realize it's not just the dean's office where we've got a deficit. And I think part of what we've got to think collectively as a school. What is it that we can do, and what is it that we should be doing? So the dean's office, yes, they're going to take responsibility. They're going to do their part. But the reality is that 3 out of the 4 divisions is running a deficit. And so that it's got to be a collective work at what we do, and that's what's important. So, you know, I'm not a fan of this pointing to other folks. We all need to take responsibility. The dean's office is going to take part of the responsibility. Others got to do it as well.
Going back to what you said before about the things we can do, like bringing in more research dollars, that is obviously super important, and being on the EOHS treadmill and working really hard to bring in dollars because of that deficit. I get it, and I buy into it also. But I also think that the university makes decisions that affect all of the units on campus, and I don't know how the power differentials work at that level, but if there are ways that we can be helpful to you in making a case about how the campus decides to allocate dollars, because we keep having this discussion, which is, well, they're going to do that anyway, so let us worry about, you know, the things that we can do independently. I don't totally agree with it, so I would like to be helpful and push it back.
That's helpful, and I mean, I do think a dual approach is good. You know, what I don't want to do is say, oh, we need to have the broader conversation, and that's the only discussion we have. I think that's good. So I appreciate you all working with me. That's great. Other questions or comments on budget?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you saying that the number of grants submitted has been decreasing and needs to go back up? And is that per faculty member, or is it we've lost the faculty who were previously submitting and they have been replaced and need more faculty?
So good. Yeah. So good. So part of what I will be looking at is exactly that. And what I have seen, and that's part of my listening session. This is what I'm doing, and I'm trying to get part of that information. But in some of the divisions, when I have looked, there's been a substantial reduction in the number of grants submitted. There's been also a reduction in the amount of dollars that are being requested. So I mean, the two still follow each other. What I do need to look at is how that compares with, as you said, loss of person. So, yeah, so good question. But I think part of that is us thinking about sort of how we turn it around. Other questions? Thoughts? Is there any way, if people are online, is there any way that you haven't received any questions or comments from them? Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. I know this wasn't easy.
Let's woke them up.
So, but no, that's good. I like the dialogue. Susan?
I'm Susan Alfeld, Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. And my presentation follows nicely from Jackie's in that I'm focusing, whoops.
Hit the down arrow.
Hit the down arrow. That down arrow. Okay, first on enrollment for fall 2017. So these are the 10-day figures that we just got from the university. Let's see. So our targets, the targets the UIC gave us were 136 for undergrad and 735 for graduate students. We're just about there in terms of graduate students, somewhat low in terms of the undergraduate enrollment, but the MPH enrollment in particular increased by more than 30 over last year. So that roughly reflects the increase overall in UIC enrollment that we saw. I was really surprised that we did so well this year, because after the presidential election in the fall, I would have thought that students weren't going to bet on public health as being a promising career for the near term anyway. And so it's a good thing I'm not a betting woman, because I really would have lost. It's hard to know in terms of what happened. Last year was particularly low, so this year might be sort of a course correction. I hope that it's something that's going to continue, but as you can see, the MPH program is by far our biggest program and represents just about half the students in the school. And because we've had this big increase in enrollment, it leads us to need to think about how we're going to manage that enrollment and how we're going to manage resources towards our different academic programs. I asked Jackie about those targets that we get from UIC, and she said those are mostly based on the enrollment from the year before, sort of what the university thinks is reasonable, rather than being something that we as a school set in terms of what our goals are for growing our particular program. So we know that as Karen mentioned, the target for the BA program was set way back when we were starting to think about the program and sort of what whoever they is, thought sounded reasonable over a number of years, and compared to what other universities, many of which have different profiles than ours does. But so what would be a reasonable enrollment? We would need to take a closer look at that to think about and to know more about what would break even and what would make us money, and if that indeed should be a goal for the undergraduate program. And we know that about half of our students, so that's about half of our graduate students, get, and I can share this. If it looks like people are writing figures down, I'm happy to share this. I can send it out to the faculty listserv if that would be, they have it? We're going to share the whole thing. Great. That would be helpful data to have. So the other program that I know has particular enrollment targets is the DRPH program, because they want and need to keep each incoming cohort to a certain size. But other than that, for instance, my understanding is that PhD enrollments in different divisions are based on the number of faculty who are available to mentor those students, how big a cohort you need to run the classes, how many people apply, how many promising candidates apply, that kind of thing, rather than having a longer term plan for that program. I know the MHA program has set particular targets for incoming cohorts and has plans to grow that cohort. But more broadly speaking, we really haven't thought about that in terms of our academic enterprise. And the other issue too is with certificate programs, that we've seen them as providing both a service to the public health community, but also as a revenue source for the school. And I'd like us to put more thought into where we put those resources, where we're going to grow the school, and why. And when we take a look at the, you know, some of the CEF activity, the reasons that we're doing that are going to become more clear too. Does anybody have any questions about this before I move off of this? Sure.
Break it down in-state and out-of-state?
We could do that. We haven't, I don't have that. That does relate directly to money, and, you know, and also when, how do I say this in a tactful way? Often, though I guess I don't have any data to support this, I would say my impression is that often some of the higher achieving students are from out of state, and those may be the ones who are more likely to get research assistantships, but I'm not sure of that. Certainly when it comes to doctoral students, we like to be able to support our doctoral students, and, you know, probably wouldn't get many of them from out of state unless we could support them. But, you know, so these are all things that we're going to need to take into account, as well as issues like with range tuition and how that impacts the dollars that flow down to the school and the divisions. It's really complicated, and I hope that we can get a much better handle on it. Yeah, Vicki?
Can we get a breakdown at some point of full versus part-time students over time? That is, has it changed since we put it into the report? Are we losing the people who were part-time who were out there?
I don't think that we are, but that's certainly something that we can take a look at. Currently, there are about 123 in the in-class version of the integrated core, and I think it's 68 in the online section. So that's pretty robust. Lisa?
Just following up on Jesus' point in terms of the types of students, and if we're going back to the last conversation about finances, I just think we want to acknowledge that on the one hand, the PhD students are incredibly important for our reputation and for research, but we also need to acknowledge that that line brings in absolutely no tuition dollars at all. So it's a trade-off, and I think that that's going to have to be part of our discussion on what's the sweet spot to maybe think about just only bring in the absolute top people we can, and maybe forego the others because they use up resources, and the lower tier PhD students aren't going to do anything necessarily for a reputation other than producing more PhDs, which is fine too. But there might be some sweet spot that we haven't really done an analysis on, so I think this would fall under Linda Forrest, who's taken over as the graduate, I'm not sure what's the position called, but
DGS, yeah, Director of Graduate Studies.
Sorry. So I think that that's something that's maybe as divisions we can work with on for maybe trying to figure that out, because I mean it is a lot of students out of the 824, but so when we say, yeah, we have a lot of students, if 100 of them are PhD students, then don't bring in, yeah, anyway, just something to keep in mind.
And the PhD students stay a longer time than the MPH students too, right? Jamie?
Susan, when you send this out, can you add in another slide that shows us new enrollment versus, this combines new enrollment plus ongoing, right? It would just be helpful to see sort of the breakdown with new enrollment too.
Sure.
I mean, not to pick a course, but something that we had talked with the director's meeting before, that will help us is if we can account actually for those enrollments, who's actually paying tuition, right? So of those 824 students, my sense is about 600 pay tuition, or we get tuition.
Of the 824,
60% of them pay 60% of them pay tuition.
At most, but we don't know what number of students actually are generating revenue.
We do.
Okay, so you share that, that would be great.
I mean, I give it to HPA every year.
It would be good to have a global picture and to share with all of us, with the divisions, because it might be misleading, right? If we got in CHS 81 students, but if I look at detail and only 40 are paying tuition, then I'm killing myself, right?
Yeah, I can tell you what your waiver rate is.
That would be great.
David?
Basics of a table, but with not paying tuition, this term we're using. So a PhD student gets a tuition waiver. So on my grant, I pay that
So I think that would be really helpful. That's something that's
just trying to get
right.
the basics. Yeah, it comes in. It's not, obviously with the caveats that Linda just mentioned.
But that's murky to me too still about how it comes back to the university and how it comes back to the school and who it impacts.
And they're coming back to the units that manage the grants.
It comes back to the units whose students it is. Because there are a lot of grant funds in the school that have no students. For instance, IHRP generates a lot of tuition remission and they don't get a dime. These academic units get it all. And the dean's office.
Jackie, is it 100% and 40% or 75%?
75%. Because the campus takes it here. Just saying, campus takes 25% off the top of anything related to it.
So they do treat it as tuition, not ICR.
I don't know
It
how.
comes
I
back
would
with
have to look
ICR
at the
piece.
remission. I'm not as familiar. We just get the lump sums, and so I know that IHRP, who generates a lot of it, doesn't get any tuition remission back because they don't have students. I can look more carefully at what the campus takes or doesn't take from that.
Nadine?
Sure.
Sure.
Jackie question, Susan question. What portion of our waivers are actually funded either through grants or board trustees? Are there some still that we're basically eating the tuition to give students?
Almost all the TAs.
All the TAs.
Right.
GAs. We don't get any. So RAs we get some of it back because it's come through remission, but for TAs and GAs.
And that's approximately what percent? Like of all the assistantships that our students have,
I don't know.
Don't really know.
We
I
don't
think
have
that's-
many GAs.
I think it's pretty small. I would say
But I don't know.
less than 20% would be my guess.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah. So sounds like there's a lot of questions around this area, and all of us would benefit from a further understanding. To be determined. All right. So I want to talk about the 2016 CEEF criteria. Should I take about 5 minutes more for this section? Or okay, great. And interestingly, I took a look at the original CEEF rollout document that was presented at last year's APHA conference, and they called it the most significant change since the 1915 Welch Rose report in terms of their recommendations for public health education. So that's a very long time, very big changes. The revision aims were very broad in terms of ensuring quality, fostering flexibility and innovation, by which they primarily pointed to decreasing silos and reducing the reporting burden. They acknowledged that the whole process of regular reporting as well as the reaccreditation have become quite burdensome for the schools. So in terms of the highlights, broadly speaking, there's a focus now on competencies and assessment of student learning rather than courses completed. So before it was, if you took epidemiology and passed it, they assumed that you learned epidemiology, and however the school defined it was considered pretty much adequate for CEEF. I'm not totally doing justice to this, but more or less. The most change for our School of Public Health is going to be in the MPH. Our BA program and our DRPH program largely align with these new CEEF criteria, although they're quite different from the 2011 criteria, which was the last revision. The way that our schools have designed those programs, they largely align. So there's really going to be very little that they're going to need to do. And overall, in terms of the CEEF guidelines, there's limited change for what they call the academic public health degrees, so the MS and PhD degrees. They really consider those research degrees, and they're relatively loose in terms of the criteria that, we've always focused on research. They focus on developing research capacity. The big change is in differentiating the MPH and the other, what they call professional degrees, from the academic degrees. So that's where we're seeing the biggest change. And that's why I may have come back to some of you to say, do you really want to have these students in the MPH program, or would it be more appropriate for more of these students to be in an MS program? The accreditation work group has been meeting since January of 2017. It's me, Lorraine had been participating, Sharon Dyer, and Antonia. Here's our timeline, and some people have questioned if our accreditation is until 2022, then why are you making us work so hard on it now? We really have to get things in shape. At the bottom, that first square in terms of planning, first rectangle in terms of planning curricular changes are things that we started on early, and those have been largely accomplished to date. We got most of those either well underway or finished by the end of the summer. So we're now working on planning and implementing those curricular changes. The bulk of the work is going to go into designing and putting things in place for CEF, SCEP, and Senate review this academic year. And that's important because these new curricular changes need to be in place by next fall, so fall of 2018. And in order to do that, basically they have to be at the SCEP meeting in February so we can be practically assured of Senate approval by April so that we can implement those courses in the fall. So there's a long period of time where where things aren't going to get done on the campus level, which means we have to work on it up front here. We are going to need 3 years of performance data in order to do our self-study for CEF in 2021, and then that would lead into the 2022 review. So that's where we stand. In terms of progress, the division curriculum committees have been working very hard at the division level on making the changes that they need to make to the MPH, and the MPH Oversight Committee has also been working very hard, and I really want to say how much I appreciate all the hard work of those committees. The MPH Oversight Committee is a new committee that was started in May, and people have just been tremendous. It's composed of chairs of all the division curriculum committees, and they've really been doing a great job. Very, very hard work and very thoughtful, and I really appreciate it. What's next is we need to revisit the faculty resources section of the CEF document that, of the CEF template that was filled out last semester, because there have been some changes in terms of faculty. We've had some resignations and retirements, and CEF requires that we have what they call adequate faculty resources to teach in every concentration. So as we both have some resignations and some faculty openings, as well as some new concentrations, we need to make sure that we're going to be able to staff those appropriately. The other thing that's being planned is work group outreach to the BA, DRPH, MS, and PhD programs to make sure that we're anticipating their needs and letting them know what's going to need to be done. We can't neglect them totally. We want to make sure that there's an adequate timeline to get that work done. There are significant changes, a significant number of changes that are not going to have to go through SCEP, so that can end at our CEP, and that's going to help us a lot in terms of relieving some of the anxiety about getting things through. For instance, I determined last week that the global health concentration is only adding competencies and linking those to to assessments, to assignments that they're doing. They're not going to be significantly changing their courses, so that's not going to need to go through SCEP. So if there's changes on that level that just have to do with competencies, that's going to be a lot simpler process and more predictable, because once things get out of the school and go to the campus level, it's hard to predict how they're going to react. Finally, my last slide, for more information or assistance, you can go to the CEF website. They have pretty detailed documents in terms of what's required. That's the link to the revisions, or contact me or any one of us on the work group. We're really happy to come to you. If you have specific questions, we're happy to relay questions to the working team at CEF, the consultants there, who are pretty good in terms of turnaround time, answering our questions. Some of the issues there are continuing to evolve as they get situations that they hadn't anticipated, questions, I think that they did quite a good job in terms of thinking through how these changes are going to impact programs, but they can't think of everything or have everything in place that's going to be appropriate for every university. So some of this is evolving a little bit, and they're happy to answer questions and have been quite helpful. Any questions? Ron.
Would you just like to tell everyone about the new public health course for MS and PhD students who haven't been through an MPH?
Sure. So Lorraine designed that course. It's being taught for the first time. It also will apply to other programs like the MHA program. Those students